I was diagnosed with breast cancer and told my husband and sons at dinner. My youngest cried. My oldest asked, "Will you still be able to cook?" My husband just sipped his wine and said, "Well, we all have our crosses to bear." When I missed chemo because no one would drive me, I called my sister in another state. She came that night. My husband told her, "She's being overly dramatic." She walked into the kitchen and said, "Pack your things. We're leaving." I was diagnosed with breast cancer on a gray Wednesday afternoon in late October. I still remember the way the doctor looked at me, not in the eyes, but kind of around me, like he was trying to soften the blow without actually saying anything soft. I sat there in the cold little room in the Mercy Hospital in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, still wearing that ridiculous paper gown they give you. He said words like aggressive and urgent treatment and start chemotherapy immediately. I didn't cry. Not then. I just nodded like a bobblehead, took the stack of papers he handed me, and scheduled my first chemo appointment at the front desk, like I was making a dentist appointment. When I got home, the house was loud, TV blaring, my sons shouting over a video game, the smell of something burning in the oven because no one remembered to turn it off. Normal chaos. I thought about waiting until things were calmer, but there's no perfect time to drop a bomb like that. So I called everyone to dinner. My youngest, Ben, was 15. Sensitive, sweet kid. Always had been. My oldest, Ryan, was 19. Tough, stubborn. Carried himself like the world owed him something. My husband, Mark, was already halfway through his second glass of cheap red wine when he sat down at the table. I waited until we were all eating before I said it. "I have something to tell you." They barely looked up. "I went to the doctor today," I said, pushing my chicken around my plate. "They found a tumor. It's cancer. Breast cancer." Ben dropped his fork and started crying right away. Big, messy, gasping sobs like he couldn't get enough air. I reached out to him, but he just covered his face with his hands and rocked back and forth in his chair. Ryan looked at me, dead serious, and said, "Will you still be able to cook?" I stared at him, trying to process if he was joking or if he was really that heartless. One look at his face told me he was dead serious. I didn't even know what to say. Mark didn't even put down his wine. He took another slow sip, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and said, "Well, we all have our crosses to bear." That was it. No hug. No, "We're going to get through this." No, "I'm here for you." Just that. I sat there, feeling smaller and smaller, like I was disappearing right there at the table. The next few weeks were a blur of doctor visits, scans, and blood tests. I set up all the appointments myself. Mark didn't offer to drive me. Ryan had too much going on at the community college, and Ben was willing, but he didn't have a license yet. The first chemo appointment came, and I sat on the edge of the bed that morning, dressed and ready, waiting for someone, anyone, to come with me. Mark read the newspaper like it was any other day. Ryan left early to hang out with his girlfriend. Ben had school. I waited. I called Mark from the bedroom, "Can you drive me?" He didn't even look up. "I'm working," he said, tapping away on his laptop. He worked remotely for an insurance company, hardly life or death. "I can't drive after," I said. "I'll be too sick." "You'll figure it out," he said, without missing a beat. I sat there for almost an hour, trying to will him to change his mind, but he never did. I missed the appointment. The nurse called twice, but I didn't answer. I sat on the bed with my coat still on, shaking, not sure if it was from the cold or from something breaking inside me. Around 6 that night, I called my sister Sarah. She lived in Columbus, Ohio, about 8 hours away. We hadn't been close in years, not since our mom died. Life had just gotten busy. But when I heard her voice, everything inside me cracked open. "I need help," I whispered into the phone. She didn't ask 100 questions. She just said, "I'm coming. Tonight." I hung up the phone and sat in the dark, waiting. Around 3 in the morning, I heard the tires on the gravel driveway. I looked out the window and saw her little blue Honda Civic, covered in bugs and dirt from the long drive. She came through the front door without knocking, dropped her bag, and hugged me so hard I thought my ribs might snap. Mark came downstairs, rubbing his eyes, annoyed like we'd woken him up for something stupid. "What's this about?" he asked. I opened my mouth to answer, but Sarah beat me to it. She looked him right in the eye, something I realized I'd stopped doing years ago, and said, "She's coming with me. Pack your things." Mark laughed. Actually laughed. "She's being overly dramatic," he said, waving his hand like he was swatting away a mosquito. Sarah didn't flinch. She walked past him into the kitchen, yanked open cabinets, grabbed a few trash bags, and marched back to me. "Let's go," she said. "Now." I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed what I could, a few clothes, my meds, my insurance papers. Everything else could rot in that house for all I cared. As we were walking out, Mark stood in the doorway, arms crossed, looking smug. "You're making a big mistake," he said. "You'll come crawling back." I didn't say a word. I just kept walking. Ben was crying again, standing at the top of the stairs. Ryan wasn't even home. I left everything behind. The house, the life I'd built, the marriage I'd fought so hard to keep afloat while it was sinking underneath me the whole time. Sarah drove us back to Ohio through the night. I stared out the window at the black fields and endless highways, feeling a mix of terror and relief I can't even describe. When we pulled into her driveway, a modest little house in a quiet neighborhood, she turned off the engine and sat there for a minute, letting the car tick down and cool off. "You're safe now," she said. And for the first time in what felt like years, I believed her. The first few days at Sarah's house felt like breathing after being underwater for too long. She made a bed for me in her spare room, brought me tea, sat with me when I was too sick to stand. No judgment. No sighs of annoyance. No comments about me being a burden. But the peace didn't last long. Mark started calling. At first, it was just once or twice a day. Then it turned into 5, 10, 15 calls a day. Voicemails too long, angry rants about how I had embarrassed him by leaving, how I had abandoned my responsibilities, how I was acting like a child. He even started texting Ben and Ryan, stirring the pot. I saw the texts on Ben's phone when he visited. "Your mother's losing her mind. She left because she doesn't care about this family anymore. She's going to die alone and broke." It gutted me. But what broke me worse was how Ryan reacted. He took Mark's side. Ryan called me one night, voice dripping with anger. "You're not sick enough to just ditch us," he said. "Dad's been holding everything together." I almost laughed at how backward that was. Holding everything together? The man couldn't even hold a conversation without a drink in his hand. But I didn't say that. I just listened as my own son, the boy I carried, raised, worried about every damn day of my life, told me I was selfish. After that call, I cried harder than I had when the doctor said cancer. Not because of Mark. I expected him to turn on me. But Ryan, he was supposed to be better. I thought he'd see. Ben, at least, stayed close. He started visiting me when he could, riding the Greyhound from Iowa to Ohio every other weekend. He'd sit with me while I was hooked up to the chemo, holding my hand, even when I was too sick to talk. One night, after I threw up for the third time in an hour, Ben said, "I wish I was old enough to have gotten you out sooner." I hugged him as tight as my weak arms would let me. Meanwhile, Sarah kept me afloat. She was fierce in a way I'd forgotten women could be. She dragged me to every doctor appointment, sat in every waiting room, made sure I ate, even when I didn't want to. She didn't let me feel sorry for myself for more than 5 minutes at a time. But trouble was brewing. Mark had filed for divorce behind my back, and he was trying to claim abandonment so he could keep the house, the cars, and even go after my small retirement savings. Sarah found out by accident, opening one of the legal letters that showed up at her place. When she handed me the envelope, her face was tight, like she was trying not to explode. "This son of a bitch," she muttered. I opened it with shaking hands. It felt like being punched all over again. He wasn't just moving on. He was trying to erase me, steal what little security I had left while I was at my lowest. Sarah's husband, Mike, who normally stayed quiet about family drama, leaned over the counter and said, "You're gonna need a shark for a lawyer. Someone who bites back." I found one. Her name was Laura Whitaker. Small woman, sharp as a razor, based in downtown Columbus. She didn't blink when I told her everything. "He's counting on you being too sick, too tired, and too scared to fight," she said. "We're going to make him regret that." I didn't have much strength. Some days I couldn't even hold a cup of water steady. But every time I thought about Mark sipping his wine at that dinner table, acting like my life didn't matter, I found a little more fight in me. We filed a counterclaim. And not just for divorce, for spousal abandonment and emotional abuse. The court process was brutal. Mark tried to paint me as unstable, saying I overreacted and fabricated things. He even dragged Ryan into it, making him testify that I was dramatic and irrational. Sitting there, hearing my son describe me like a stranger, was like being slowly stabbed. But then, the twist. Then, my sweet Ben stood up and asked to speak. He wasn't even supposed to testify. He was only 17. But the judge allowed it. Ben told the court about the missed appointments, about how no one in the house would drive me, about how Mark called me a burden to my face, about the night I sat crying in my room while they all pretended nothing was wrong. The courtroom was dead silent. Ben looked Mark dead in the eye and said, "You didn't lose her because of cancer. You lost her because you never loved her enough to care if she lived." Mark's face went white. For once, he had nothing to say. The judge ruled in my favor. I got my share of the house, half of the retirement, and, most importantly, a restraining order that kept Mark away from me for 2 full years. It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen, heard, believed. But the damage with Ryan, that didn't fix itself overnight. I reached out a few times after the court stuff ended. Sent texts. Left voicemails. No answer. Ryan had moved in with Mark, and they seemed glued together by their own bitterness. Sarah told me, "You can't force someone to see the truth if they're committed to the lie." I hated hearing that, but it was true. Chemo dragged on. There were days I didn't want to open my eyes, days I would have gladly disappeared if it meant the nausea, the bone-deep exhaustion, the endless needle pricks would stop. But Sarah, stubborn as ever, refused to let me quit. "You survive out of spite if you have to," she said once, wrapping a blanket around my shoulders. Survive to piss them off. And slowly, inch by inch, I did. My hair fell out. My nails turned gray. My skin looked like wet paper. But somewhere under all that wreckage, I was still me. One day, about a year after I moved in with Sarah, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a picture of me and my sons, taken years ago at the state fair. We were standing in front of a funnel cake stand, all smiling, all sticky and sunburned. Written on the back, in Ryan's sloppy handwriting, was a single line, "I'm sorry." No explanation. No promises. Just 2 words. I sat there holding that picture for a long time, not sure if I should feel hopeful or heartbroken. Maybe both. Sarah came in, saw me crying, and sat down beside me. "You're stronger than all of them put together," she said. "Don't ever forget that." I didn't answer. I just kept holding that photo, wondering where the road would go next. A few weeks after getting that photo from Ryan, I found myself staring at my phone every night, half hoping, half dreading he might actually call. For a while, nothing happened. Just the usual silence. Then, one Thursday evening, as I was sitting on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the sun go down over Sarah's quiet street, the phone rang. It was Ryan. I almost dropped the phone. I let it ring once more before I picked up, my heart beating so loud I could barely hear. "Mom," he said. Just that one word, and my throat closed up. He sounded different. tired. Like the anger had burned itself out and left nothing but ashes behind. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I didn't understand. Back then. I thought Dad was telling me the truth. I didn't want to believe he could be that cruel." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. "He's not the same anymore," Ryan said. "He drinks all the time now. He talks about you like you're the villain, but I see it now. He treated you like crap. And I helped him." "I'm so sorry." I wiped my eyes with the corner of the blanket. "I never wanted you to choose sides," I said. "I just wanted you to care enough to ask." "I was scared," he admitted. "I was stupid." We talked for hours that night. About everything. About the years I stayed for them. About the nights I cried alone in the bathroom so they wouldn't see. About how Mark had slowly poisoned them against me without them even realizing it. By the time we hung up, I felt like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't realize had been suffocating me. But life has a way of kicking you when you finally think you're standing up. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the Mercy Hospital in Cedar Rapids. It was Mark. He was in the ER. Liver failure. Too much drinking for too many years had finally caught up to him. And somehow, despite everything, I was still listed as his emergency contact. At first, I laughed. A hard, bitter laugh that scared even me. After all the ways he ignored me, hurt me, twisted the knife when I was weakest. And now he needed me. Sarah found me sitting on the kitchen floor, laughing and crying at the same time. "You don't owe him a damn thing," she said, crouching beside me. "I know," I said. "I know." But part of me, the part that still remembered the good days before the rot set in, couldn't just pretend he didn't exist. Against my better judgment, I agreed to take a call from his doctor. They told me he was dying, that he had maybe a few weeks left, that he was asking for me. I didn't tell Sarah everything. I didn't want her to try to stop me. I booked a Greyhound back to Cedar Rapids. Alone. The ride there was a blur. Farm fields rolling past, endless highways, cheap gas station coffee. I felt like I was floating outside my own body. When I walked into his hospital room, I almost didn't recognize him. Mark had been a tall, broad man once, the kind who filled a room just by standing in it. Now he was shriveled, yellow-skinned, a ghost of the man I had married. He opened his eyes and smiled when he saw me. A weak, watery smile. "I knew you'd come," he rasped. I sat down but stayed on the edge of the chair like it would burn me if I got too close. He started talking, rambling, half delirious. Apologizing, then blaming me, then apologizing again. A mess of guilt and denial, swirling together. At one point he said, "You were always stronger than me. I hated you for it." That hit harder than I wanted it to. I stayed for about an hour. Listened. Let him say whatever he needed to say. Then I stood up. "I forgive you," I said, even though part of me didn't. Not for him. For me. He started crying as I left the room. I didn't look back. When I got back to Ohio, Sarah was waiting on the porch. She didn't ask anything. She just handed me a cup of tea and sat beside me, watching the stars come out one by one. Mark died 3 days later. Ryan and Ben went back for the funeral. I didn't. I sent flowers and a short note that just said, "Peace, finally." Ryan came to stay with me for a while after that. At first, it was awkward. 2 people who loved each other, but had miles of hurt piled between them. One night, we sat on the back porch and Ryan asked, "Do you think I'm like him?" I shook my head. "You were scared. That's not the same thing as being cruel." He cried then. Not big sobs like Ben, but quiet tears that slid down his face while he stared up at the night sky. I realized then that Mark hadn't just broken me. He had broken Ryan too, in his own way. The healing wasn't quick. Or clean. Some days, I wanted to scream at Ryan all over again for the things he had said. Other days, I just wanted to hold him and tell him none of it was his fault. Life moved on, but it was different now. Realer. Messier. I finished chemo. My hair started growing back, soft and fuzzy like a baby chick. My strength came back slowly. First walking to the mailbox without needing a nap. Then walking around the block. Then doing my own grocery shopping. Every small victory felt huge. Sarah and Mike surprised me with a small party the day my doctor said the words remission. They decorated the backyard with string lights and served cake shaped like a pink ribbon. It was cheesy, perfect, and I cried the whole time. At one point, standing there with the people who had fought for me when I couldn't even fight for myself, I thought, maybe this is what family is supposed to feel like. Not obligation. Not guilt. Not fear. Love. Chosen. Messy. Stubborn love. But life wasn't done with its twists yet. One crisp October afternoon, almost a year after Mark's death, I got a letter from a lawyer's office in Cedar Rapids. Inside was a copy of Mark's will. Turns out, he had changed it right before he died. He left everything to me. The house, his small savings account, his beat-up pickup truck, even the stupid wine collection he had hoarded like it was gold. I sat there at the kitchen table, laughing in disbelief. Sarah looked over my shoulder and said, "Are you kidding me?" Mike just shook his head. Dead man's guilt. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to torch it all, leave it behind forever. But another part of me, the part that had clawed her way back from the edge, saw something different. A chance. Not for Mark. For me. A chance to sell it all, take the money, and finally build a life that wasn't tied to pain. I looked at Sarah and said, "Let's drive to Iowa." The drive back to Cedar Rapids felt like stepping into a graveyard made of memories. We passed by all the old spots, the grocery store where I used to clip coupons like a second job, the diner where Mark and I used to fight in the parking lot with the windows up so nobody could hear. Even the hospital where I got my diagnosis loomed over the town like a ghost. When we pulled into the driveway of the old house, I almost turned around and left. The grass was overgrown. The porch sagged like it was tired of holding itself up. The front door hung slightly crooked, like even it had given up. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a bad memory frozen in place. I stepped inside. The air smelled stale, like old wood and regret. There were still piles of Mark's junk everywhere. Newspapers stacked waist-high, bottles hidden in corners, a stained recliner that looked like it would collapse if you breathed on it too hard. Ryan and Ben met me there. Ryan had offered to help clean out the house. Maybe to make up for the past. Maybe because he needed closure too. At first, it was just sad work. Bagging up Mark's clothes. Tossing old papers. Picking through the wreckage of a life that had rotted from the inside out. But then Ben found something. It was tucked inside one of Mark's old filing cabinets, a thick manila envelope, sealed tight with duct tape. When we opened it, the world shifted. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Photos of me. Photos Mark had taken without me knowing, in the bathroom, sleeping, changing clothes. Some looked like they were taken through tiny holes drilled into the walls. There were notes too. Detailed, disgusting notes about how he controlled me, how he manipulated the boys against me, how he planned it. It wasn't just emotional abuse. It was stalking. It was premeditated cruelty. Sarah turned pale when she read them. Mike cursed so loud the neighbors probably heard. Ryan sat on the floor, holding the papers, shaking like he couldn't breathe. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know it was this bad." None of us spoke for a long time. Ben finally broke the silence. "Burn it," he said. "Burn the whole damn house down." I almost said no. Almost. But something inside me snapped. For years, I carried that house on my back like a cross. Every memory, every scar, tied to its walls. Mark had turned it into a prison. Even dead, he had left traps for me. I wasn't going to carry it a second longer. We dragged everything into the backyard. Every piece of Mark's life. Every reminder of who he was. Ben doused it all in lighter fluid. I struck the match myself. The fire roared up so fast it took my breath away. Flames ate the furniture, the papers, the lies. The smoke rose high into the gray Iowa sky, carrying the last pieces of Mark's sickness into the clouds. We stood there and watched it burn, not speaking. When the fire department came, I told them the truth. It was an accident. I was cleaning and something tipped over. They looked at me, looked at the twisted mess of what had been Mark's life, and didn't ask any more questions. The next day, I sold the land to a neighbor for pennies, just to get rid of it. I didn't want a dime from that place. I thought that would be the end of it, but life still had one more twist waiting. A month later, I got a letter from the insurance company. Turns out, Mark had taken out a life insurance policy years ago, one I didn't even know about. And he had named me the sole beneficiary. $500,000. It felt like blood money. Sarah said, "Take it. Build something good from it. It's not his anymore." Mike said, "You earned every goddamn cent." Even Ryan, still struggling with the guilt of not seeing the truth sooner, said, "He tried to ruin you. Let him pay for it now." I thought about it long and hard. In the end, I cashed the check. I used part of it to pay every debt I had ever carried, hospital bills, old credit cards, every stupid financial scar left from a lifetime of scraping by. Then I took what was left and did something Mark would have hated. I opened a women's shelter. Right there in Cedar Rapids. A place for women who had nowhere to go. Who were told they were crazy, dramatic, selfish, all the words I had heard 1,000 times. I named it the Phoenix House. Because we didn't just survive. We burned the past down and rose up from the ashes. I stood at the grand opening, holding the giant scissors they give you for ribbon cuttings, and looked around at the people gathered there, women, kids, families starting over, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Pride. Not because I had survived Mark, but because I had taken everything he tried to destroy and turned it into something he couldn't touch. Ryan now volunteers there on weekends. He still fights his own battles. Guilt doesn't just disappear, but he's trying. That's all I ever wanted. Ben? He's thriving. He got a scholarship for college. Says he wants to be a counselor someday. Says he wants to help kids like he used to be. Scared, confused, trapped between parents who didn't know how to love right. As for me, I don't pretend everything is perfect. I don't tie it up with a pretty bow. The truth is, parts of me will always be scarred. But now, they're scars I'm not ashamed of. They're proof I made it. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and I can finally hear myself think, I whisper into the dark, "You lost, Mark. You lost." And I sleep just fine.